Welcome to Time of Death. This video is for informational purposes and in no way meant to glorify or condone violence. In today's video, we'll be discussing the murder of Artie Pullum. Pullum was shot and killed on Thursday, January 17, 2008, in the 10,700 block of Grape Street in Watts, according to LA County coroner records. Leonard Rocha was subsequently arrested and charged with the murder. The following is the evidence at trial. On January 17, 2008, around 4 p.m., Ms. Gutierrez picked up her boyfriend, victim Artie Pullum, from work. The victim was a Fushtown Mafia Crip gang member. Ms. Gutierrez, her 3-month-old daughter, and her 14-year-old niece were in the car. On the way home, they stopped at a liquor store and the victim bought a bottle of beer. The victim asked Ms. Gutierrez to stop at the corner of 107th and Grape Street so he could socialize with 3 friends of his. One of these friends, DC, was also a member of the Fushtown Mafia Crips. Gilbert Sanchez arrived on the bicycle and talked to the victim. The victim talked aggressively and used hand movements. Gilbert left on his bicycle and the victim continued talking with his friends. Gilbert told his brother Derek Deadman and a cousin Richard Sanchez that someone wanted to talk to Deadman around the corner. They were all members of Watts Varrio Grape Street and they were all defendants' cousins. Gilbert returned to the corner of 107th and Grape Streets with several men, including defendant, whom Ms. Gutierrez knew. Defendant was the only one in the group who wore his hair in a ponytail. Deadman and Richard arrived at the corner. Richard recognized defendant's friend DC as a member of the Fushtown Mafia Crips. The victim began talking loudly and using lots of hand movements. He began challenging people to fight and took off his shirt. Richard didn't see the victim attack anyone or exhibit a weapon. According to Richard, the corner was inside Grape Street gang's territory. At some point, Richard saw defendant move toward the victim. Ms. Gutierrez's niece saw defendant pull out a gun and shoot the victim. Richard heard 2 or 3 gunshots and began to run. Ms. Gutierrez heard a shot and saw defendant fire a second shot to the back of the victim's head. The victim's body spun and fell to the ground. When initially interviewed by law enforcement, Ms. Gutierrez and her niece did not tell everything they knew because they wanted the victim's friends to kill defendant. Later, Ms. Gutierrez changed her mind and cooperated because she didn't want defendant's blood on her hands. At trial, Ms. Gutierrez's niece testified consistently with Gutierrez's testimony and identified defendant as the shooter. Richard did not want to cooperate with law enforcement, but after talking with his mother, he finally admitted that he was at the scene with Deadman and Gilbert during the shooting. He stated defendant was also at the scene. The victim suffered 4 gunshot wounds. Shots to the back of his head and to his back were fatal ones. Toxicology results showed that the victim had a .19 blood alcohol level at the time of his death, and there were also traces of marijuana in his bloodstream. There was no evidence that he had been in a physical scuffle. LAPD officer Salvador Cervantes testified as a gang expert. He was assigned to the Watts Varrio Grape Street gang. The gang claimed the same area as the Grape Street Watts Crips, but the 2 gangs were close. The location of the shooting, the corner of 107th and Grape Streets, was within the Watts Varrio Grape Street territory. The Fushtown Mafia Crips was a smaller gang whose territory was surrounded by that of Watts Varrio Grape Street and Grape Street Watts Crips. Richard, Gilbert, Deadman, and defendant were all members of Watts Varrio Grape Street. Defendant had admitted his membership during a police encounter, and when he was arrested, he was wearing the paraphernalia of the gang, including a purple Washington Nationals hat, a purple shirt, and purple tennis shoes. In response to a hypothetical question based on the evidence of this case, Officer Cervantes opined that the shooting was for the benefit of Watts Varrio Grape Street. The opinion was based on the fact that Gilbert left after a confrontation with the victim and returned with 3 fellow gang members, one of them armed, to confront the victim. Following the trial, defendant Leonard Rocha was found guilty of murder. The jury also found true the gun and gang allegations. The court sentenced defendant to 50 years to life in state prison. Artie Pullum was 30 years old at the time of death.